Andy, Rich, very excited to be talking to you. Andy, if you can tell us, you have been a monk. What's your association with India?
First of all, hi, and thank you for having us both. I think that India has always held a very special place in my heart. I made the decision to become a Buddhist monk when I was 21. So I left the UK and I flew to Delhi. I took a bus up to Dharamsala. And I went knocking on the doors of some local monasteries to see sort of how, it was before the internet, right? So I didn't know how to become a monk, but I knew that India had always been sort of like a bastion of meditation, arguably the birthplace of meditation, and so it felt like the natural place to come.
Meditation happens at old age, right?
Yeah, I know, it's a strange thing. It's still strange in my own mind, in some ways. So I was introduced to meditation when I was quite young. I was 10 years old. I learned with my mother at home. So it had been around kind of growing up. But I think I just got to a point where I just couldn't find peace of mind, So I was heavily invested in physical well-being. So I was studying sports science at university. I was competing as a gymnast. I was working as a personal trainer. And so I was really all in on physical health. But mentally, I couldn't find sort of peace of mind at all. And I'd experienced some difficult things in my late teens. My stepsister had died in an accident, and some friends had died in a car accident that we were all involved in. And I think it left me with a feeling that you can't outrun your mind. For a few years I tried to distract myself. I tried to run away from my sort of self, until I got to a place where I realized the only way I was going to find peace of mind was to sit with my mind and get comfortable with it. So I think it was with that realization that I made the decision to become a monk.
How did both of you think of this and both of you come together to create Headspace?
Well, I think Andy was teaching meditation one-on-one in a clinic in London, and he was working with all sorts of different people, and he was actually seeing one of my friends who I was doing some freelance work for, and I was really struggling with my own kind of mental health at the time. I was really struggling with anxiety as the thing, and it was surprising how bad it got for me quickly, like how quickly I kind of felt pretty desperate. And so my friend was worried about me and said, look, I've been getting meditation lessons off this ex-Buddhist monk down in the financial district. I think you could really benefit from it. I've got a lot of benefit from it. Why don't you go and meet him? And so that's how it started. It was like a very kind of innocent introduction. And weirdly, I was studying acupuncture at the time, which is another longer story. And Andy was teaching meditation in the same building, and we never met. So for a year, we were basically in the same building, but we never met until this mutual friend introduced us. And so yeah, I was struggling. Andy said, look, I think I can help you with it. And I started practicing it. And from my own personal point of view, I felt like, why don't more people know about this? Like, unlike in India, where it's a very well-known thing, if you spoke about meditation, people would physically back away from you. Like it was not a conversation that people wanted to have. And so that, I think for both of us, Andy had the experience of it had really benefited him. He knew it, he was an expert, knew that he wanted to bring it out to more people. And then I was kind of just intrigued, how could you present this in a way where people could accept it? Yeah. And it was really that kind of personal relationship that started that journey.
And it's worth adding as well. So Rich and I, we met. I remember, like, we went out for our first cup of tea and a chat just to meet. And at the very, very beginning, like, Rich had far more insight than I did in terms of what this could be and where it was going. And he said, I think it should be an app. I think, it could be like the Nike Plus of meditation. And that was really at the very, very beginning. I think the App Store had only just
about 9 months
kind of got going, I had no idea what an app was, and I had no idea about any technological things at all. And so I said to Rich, kind of, I'm not sure, And so we, because of that, it took us a couple of years to get to the point of releasing the app. Up until that point, it was events, it was books, and it was more kind of traditional ways of scaling. So the scale that we found ourselves with now is thanks to, obviously thanks to technology and the role that plays, but it's also thanks to Rich and his kind of foresight, seeing what this could be.
TechCrunch, in fact, wrote that Headspace is in a bitter competition with Calm, and you know, there's so many other companies. In some way, you guys showed the way, and there's so many companies coming. How do you look at this?
We were the first meditation app in the world. Like that was, there were no others. There's now over 4,000 if you think globally how different people have kind of approached the space, and that's in the space of effectively 8 years, because our first app came out in 2012. So that's a kind of crazy, I think that just says that there is a huge need, and there's many different ways that people can find their pathway to kind of help in this. I think we think about the vision of improving the health and happiness of the world, and I think in the same way that people will go to different gyms, they'll do different exercise classes, people are going to try lots of different things. We see that. We see people try all of the products, they come back to ours, they try others. So I think there's still a lot of discovery that people are trying to make. But ultimately, if people are sleeping better, eating better, having better relationships, and they're finding that away from us, that's good. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think where we really want to focus on is how do we build the best possible product that we believe in and that we can prove with science and that our members love. And that's what we spend all of our time thinking about. So we just see it as a really new space that's trying to work its way out. I don't know, that's how.
Yeah, no, I think, look, that's not as exciting a media story. So of course the media would like to present it as a competition and everything. Like the idea of competing for people's happiness or competing for peace of mind is kind of bizarre. It's a strange idea. Of course it is a company, but we genuinely believe as a team that if we can deliver the authenticity that we know that we have, and as Rich said, if we can back that up with science, then it'll be as good as it can be, and the market will decide, people will decide kind of what's best for them.
You are in relieving stress space, but you're also in a very competitive space. So does it not affect you at all?
Yeah, I think I think we would be lying through our teeth if we didn't say that it was stressful running a business at the scale that we're at. I found it one of the most challenging things that I've ever kind of undertook. I'd say that I was in a very stressful job before, and that's what caused me to meet Andy. Like I feel like my mind really gave up on itself, and so I know what it feels like to be in a very stressful work environment and to almost break down. I would say that we've been working on this for 12 years, and I have a practice. I practice every single day. It doesn't mean that I'm immune to stress, but I feel like I've got much better tools to be able to handle it from a personal point of view. So I still get anxious. I still get worried about things. It's still stressful when stuff happens externally that you have no control over. I think you can apply that to anything in life. I think everyone experiences that, whether it's at work or home. But the magic of, I think, having a regular practice is you feel in yourself confident that you can get through it. And I think before, I never actually felt that. I wasn't actually sure that it would end up okay. And I think that by building these things into your life, you just have a better chance of doing that. And so, I don't know, that's been my experience. But yes, it is stressful. It is stressful.
Maybe not, and I don't mean this in a throwaway way, but like not to take it too seriously. Of course it's important, and if we're investing a lot of time and energy in something, and maybe there are like implications for our families and everything, of course it's really important. But if we put too much pressure on ourselves, and if we're holding on too tightly to expectation, and if our happiness is dependent on a particular outcome, how can we not feel stressed, right? So if we can I think a better way of thinking about it is, okay, what direction? Whether it's myself as an individual, whether it's us as a company, like what direction do we want to head in? Okay, let's head off in that direction, but not be too focused on the goal in the future. Let's be focused on the micro steps, the things that are important that are going to allow us to get to that thing. Because I think too often in life we're focused, our eye is over there, but we're here. And that distance, that's the stress we feel, that's the pressure we feel. If we can kind of focus more on just being present now, then I think it's more comfortable.
You have investors, you have to grow your numbers, you are competing every day. How do you maintain this happiness in the moment?
I think again by taking it quite lightly. I don't think there's no magic pill. So we can't just say, oh, okay, and now everything's okay. So I think given how long I've been training in meditation, I mean, it'd be disappointing if I wasn't, if I was constantly getting stressed. I think that having a daily practice, so I think there's a few things actually. And for me, I'm still learning. It's not like I've worked it all out and like I'm an expert. I don't see it like that. I see myself as a student of mindfulness, of meditation. And I'm still learning, and what worked in the monastery didn't necessarily work in business, you know. So for example, in the monastery, there was no physical exercise. For me now, because we have a very sort of busy life, it's really important to me not just to meditate, but also to incorporate some kind of physical activity, to also focus on the way that I'm eating, to focus on my sleep and make sure I'm not just getting enough sleep, but I'm getting restful sleep, the right kind of sleep, to make sure that I'm making time for my family and for joy in my life. Like, all of those things are really important. It's like, it's not one thing.
Yeah.
And I think if we treat it like that, it's kind of like, wow, so many things. So start off with one thing. Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's getting some daily exercise, whatever it is, and try to approach it with a mindful lens, you know, rather than thinking, okay, I'm gonna go and exercise because I want a six-pack. Well, good for you. Maybe you get a six-pack, it'll do nothing for your happiness. Trust me. Not that I have one, but you know what I mean. So, you know, I think more about is there something that you can do in your life, a daily activity, that's going to help you feel like a greater sense of joy, a greater sense of peace, and going to allow you not only to be happier for yourself, but also for the people around you.
Tell us about your vision now with Headspace.
Well, we've got the vision's always been, it's actually one of the first things that we ever wrote together, which was to improve the health and happiness of the world. But the way that we've been kind of thinking about that is, you know, how do we help folks create healthy routines that last a lifetime? So we think about routines as quite a broad idea. It's not, you'll notice it's not a meditation practice, it's healthy routines. And we think about these three core areas. We think about consumer health. Okay, where does consumer health go in the next 10 years? We believe that brands are going to play an outsized role in people's lives. I think services like Headspace have kind of already proved that out, that people are coming to an app for things that they would have never have come to an app for before. So we have to make sure that we have a really trusted brand, and that's the consumer kind of play. The second kind of horizon for us is B2B. So we, you know, especially in the States, you know, employers are going to have to take a bigger role in people's health. They already are. It costs a huge amount of money. So how we show up in the workplace, and if we think, I'm sure it's the same in India, that a lot of our stress actually comes from work. So how we show up in the workplace, I think, is going to be really important. And then the third horizon is healthcare. So how do we actually be part of doctors kind of prescribing Headspace, so paid for by insurers, prescribed by doctors. And so all of those things together are they're really starting to manifest themselves as we speak. So in the product at the moment, you notice that we've got a sleep product, we've got a move product, we've got meditation. So broader kind of play around kind of consumer health. And then B2B, we have about 600 B2B clients. Yeah. So we represent about 20% of Fortune 50 companies, where we go in and we work with them as a kind of, to help them with their stress and their resilience amongst their kind of workforce. And then we've got this health product that will be coming out in 2021. So it's a specific product for chronic diseases. So we've identified about 20 different chronic diseases where we think Headspace could have a kind of outsized impact. So it's a separate product, completely separate tech stack, and it's a subsidiary of the main company.
You're also investing in research, right?
In many ways, we're already sort of well down that journey. We have over 70 clinical trials around the world. We have over 25 published papers already. So we can actually say with confidence now that Headspace does reduce stress, that it does reduce anxiety, that it does improve focus, that it does improve compassion. So I think already we kind of have a good understanding. And in fact, many of those conversations with sort of B2B clients, for example, we wouldn't even be able to begin those conversations unless we had the science. So I do feel like that's a real differentiator for Headspace. It's something we sort of care really deeply about. It's important not only for the healthcare product down the line, but it's also really important for the consumer product right now. I think today, everyone's just been fascinated by the fact, like, wow, big growing market and there's so many different things, and there hasn't really been a lot of attention on rigor and on science and what is it that actually people are kind of putting out there. I think increasingly, as people become more educated, like around this space, they will start asking those questions. And so for us, it was our third hire, I think, paid hire, 9 years ago or something. I was a scientist because we really believe strongly that was the way to go.
And you wouldn't be able, I don't think you would be able to get into schools, into hospital systems. Like you need that to be able to prove that it works. So that's, you know, a core part of the strategy.
Have you had a glimpse of divinity in your meditation experience?
As a monk, one of the commitments that you take is not to share your experiences of meditation. And the reason for that is that within the monastic context, you start to compare. So two monks, you're standing together and it's kind of like, oh, how's your meditation going? Oh yeah, it's amazing, I'm enlightened. The guy who kind of like, the other one's like, oh, well, it's depressing. Like I'm really struggling with mine. And it sets up this kind of point of comparison. So generally speaking, I think kind of it's unhelpful to go into kind of that stuff. But I'm very happy to share. There were a number of moments within my monastic training and within my meditative training where certainly my life was transformed and changed again and again. And normally that was around losing any sense of self. Yeah, I was there was no I to be separate from the people around me, the world around me. And I think in those moments you could call it divinity, or you could call it, you know, there's lots of different names for it. But definitely I experienced a quality which, once you have experienced it, there's no kind of going back. And I think people often ask me why I left the monastery. I would say that if the more you experience that, the less sense it makes to stay in the monastery kind of on your, like you want to share it, right? Like why would you stay there and kind of keep it, you know? So I think those moments have not only helped change and shape my understanding of my place in the world, but it's also kind of helped our motivation and inspiration for Headspace.
You still go and train and teach people?
Yeah, one-to-one not so much these days. It's just I don't have the bandwidth, as they say. Occasionally I do. We still do some events. I'd like to get back to events. Like events is where we began. It's something that helped build a real sense of community, and I still think that's something really important. I think for both of us, when we go around and we do events and we get to meet sort of our members, like that's still like the most exciting thing. It's one thing to read a letter or an email that someone sent in. It's another person to hear from them, their stories direct. So I still think there's real value in learning meditation and discussing meditation and mindfulness like in the room together. Yeah. But yeah, thankfully the app has helped us kind of go a little bit.
There was this question on, you know, the Quora thing comes on the first page of it, and they said, oh, who's the male voice in Headspace? And they said, oh, it's Andy all the way. And I thought there is a huge association with you, right?
For better or worse, I don't know which it is, but yeah, I mean, and it was, someone asked me earlier today actually, they said, like, how did you come up with the idea of kind of using your voice? And it was, for me, it was such a strange question, because like we didn't go into it thinking like this is a voiceover kind of thing. Like it was like, so I teach meditation, so we record the teaching of the meditation. There was no even, so I'm just grateful that it worked out, because I have the voice that I have. My parents gave it to me. I can take no credit for it, and it just kind of worked out. So I think what we've learned now, especially last year as we began to sort of do internationalization and we started to translate into other languages, we've noticed actually kind of that it's not always that easy to find a voice that works for the whole market. Even in the English language, we've now have a female voice as well, which works better for some people. But yeah, in French and German and Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese, and we'll continue to translate. Hopefully there'll be Hindi kind of soon as well. But it takes a real sort of a dedicated search to find the right
you know, because voice is very important, right? Like
so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think as well in this, because it's not video, because it's audio, it feels like such an intimate sort of relationship. So the voice, I think is
How do you take product feedback? How do you look at consumer feedback?
Yeah, we think about them as our like members, and we get a lot of feedback from them. They're a pretty passionate crew, and they tell you what they want and what they don't like. And I think the female voice was from feedback from some of our community. It's not everyone, actually. The majority of folks really loved Andy's voice, but there were a portion of folks that didn't. And so that That's a key version of it. I'd say the move content that we've released, that was from feedback that we had from our community, that they were looking for that type of content. So we take it really seriously, and we whenever we release a new feature, we do qual research. So we actually reach out to a small subset of members and we interview them from all over the world. What do they like? What didn't they like? What would they like to kind of add to it? As well as the data that we're getting.
So it's from all over the...
It's all over from all over the world.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about it is that I think the differences or the things that people want are quite universal, actually.
Yeah.
In this subject, because it's just the human condition and the human mind. The human mind's the same in Spain as it is in... I know we all think it's different, there are nuances, but actually the things that people are struggling with are pretty consistent, is the truth.
Have you ever had a co-founder conflict?
We've worked together now for 12 years. We launched Headspace 10 years ago. In that entire time, we genuinely, like, we have never had like an argument, like, ever. Of course, there have been times where we've disagreed, but it hasn't manifested as an argument. You know, it's a discussion, and I think a big part of that was probably because we kind of became friends before we became business partners, and we didn't go into it thinking that we were business partners. This felt more like a project, like a mission. It wasn't kind of like, how do we create a business? So I think, you know, the fact that we'll still go surfing together. Obviously, we live in California. That's what people do in California. We go surfing together. We go on holiday together. Our families are very kind of close. I mean,
Andy married us. Not us, but me and my wife.
It's like a really unusual relationship, you know. And I'd say, like, the friendship, like that being so tight, like that always comes first. And I think that's probably why it works so well, and because we have such different skill sets. I don't know any of the stuff that Rich knows. I'm learning as time goes on, but
I definitely don't know the stuff that he knows.
But we came from just such different kind of worlds, and so that's very unusual as well. I think often in tech space, you know, kind of like you have like a number of engineers and kind of everyone has different ideas, and so I just think that, for all those reasons, we have a very, very good relationship.
Would you say at the heart of it you're a monk, or now you're an entrepreneur? What would you say?
I mean, I definitely wouldn't describe myself as an entrepreneur. I mean, if I am, I'm the most accidental entrepreneur in the world. You know, like to even find myself in this situation is still bizarre to me. Like I still don't really understand it, but I'll go along with it. You know, it's fine. I don't know. I don't want to dodge the question, but I don't think of the world in terms of labels. I don't think of myself in terms of labels, like being this or that, because I feel like it's really limiting. If I'm just a monk, then on the weekends when I want to meet my friends and go and have some drinks and kind of be really silly, then it would be very difficult if I thought of myself as a monk. And equally, if I only thought of myself as an entrepreneur, then... So I show up each day, hopefully with good intention, wanting to be happier in myself, but wanting to make a difference, a positive difference in the world. And I take life fairly lightly, I think. I try to be as playful as I can in life with myself, with my own mind, and with people around me. And so far, so good. Seems to be working out. And
do you use Headspace, both of you?
Why? I don't know. I don't think he listens to himself.
It would, it'd be slightly narcissistic.
That would be slightly weird.
Yeah.
But no, I use the product every day. Yeah.
Since last 12 years?
Yeah, I haven't missed a day of meditation in 12 years actually.
Oh, you haven't?
He's very committed.
I've never missed a day. So that's the kind of basis of everything. I feel similar to Andy. I think we feel like this was a train that was already moving, and we were lucky enough to kind of be on it. It's never felt like our thing. It's always felt like something way, way bigger than us. And I just feel really lucky that we've been able to work on this thing. Like, it's a really special thing to get up every day and be able to work on a subject matter like this. It is. So it's felt, I mean, we have this phrase, we have this thing like another day at Headspace, because like crazy stuff happens all the time, and you kind of, I think once you stop are kind of appreciating the craziness of it sometimes and like the wonder of it, you should give up. Like I think there's something kind of, the opportunities and the things that come across our pathway, and we never ever take it for granted. Like the fact that we're here in India and we meet people, we've met people in Rajasthan that came up to Andy and say, "You've really helped me." I mean, that's crazy. Yeah. Like to think that it's kind of spread in the way that it has. So you kind of, I think they're the things that you always have to wake up every day thinking about.
You've done meditation, you've used Headspace for last 12 years and you've not missed a day.
I think one thing is, I think that's a bit of my personality. I think like once I set my mind to something, I set my mind to something. I think I was in such a bad place and it helped me so much in a relatively short space of time, I would say. And I couldn't sit for like 10 minutes was really difficult for me to sit at the start, and I've kind of built it up, you know, now I practice for an hour. And when I think about that, the idea of that when I first started to now is that I can't even believe that I can even do it. But I think the biggest thing with that is one, is the kind of, I think Andy's been a massive inspiration to me. I think just look at, like, I've spent a lot of time with him and I kind of see how he is with his kids. I see how he is with his friends. I see how he is with I see how he is in business. And for me, it's the consistency of the way that he lives his life. That's a big inspiration to me because I think that's possible. I actually didn't think that those kind of things were possible. So I think that's a big part of it. And the other piece is that I think the more that you practice, the more that you realize it's about others, and not in a kind of trite way, but more in the way that I notice how I react with my wife, with my daughter, with, you know, when I'm up at like 4 in the morning and I want to go to bed and I'm like, why won't she go to sleep? And I can kind of, I get that moment where I pause and I'm like, it's not her fault. And like, it sounds like a small thing, but you know that that's because of practice. Yeah. And so the more that those things happen, if you do it every day, they compound. Yeah. They compound and compound and compound, and they're tiny little moments. But that's, for me, is why, and don't get me wrong, the days where, this morning, for example, like it took me a long time to sit down and do an hour. Like I was fiddling around in the hotel room, I was picking stuff up, I was looking at emails, I didn't want to do it, but I did it. And I think that you just got to do it. Yeah. It's the only, I think you can talk about it and think about it, but you've just got to do it. I think that's the only advice I would.
Piece of advice on how we just got to do it.
Yeah, so look, I was gonna say, look, Rich is especially disciplined, and we're not all made like that. I think so. There's a few things. I think one, start small. You know, like same with exercise. You said it. Like we tend to jump in, super enthusiastic. It's like, great, let's run 10 kilometers, and then we realize, you know, okay. So start small. In the first week, maybe just do 3 minutes a day. Maybe do 3 minutes 3 times a week. Like start with something that feels practical, commit to it and stick to it. If you can do that, over time you can build it up. That's okay. Number 2, like reframe how you think about meditation. Most people, the reason most people think meditation doesn't work, or the reason they think they're no good at meditation, is because they have false expectations about what meditation is. So they're setting themselves up for failure from the very beginning. So most people think it's about stopping the thoughts in the mind. It's not. So of course you're going to think you're really bad at meditation if you sit down and close your eyes and the thoughts keep coming. Yeah. So as much as possible, kind of making sure at the very beginning that you understand it's not about stopping thoughts, it's more about stepping back from thoughts. And the more you can be at ease with thoughts as they come and go, then the mind will naturally slow down. And then you take all the pressure off yourself. It doesn't require kind of a lot of effort. And number 3, like find a way of making it part of a pre-existing routine. So lots of people say they forget to meditate or they can't find time to meditate. So if you do something already in the morning, let's say taking a shower, let's say having a cup of coffee, orange juice, whatever it might be, think shower and meditate, coffee and meditate, whatever it might be, attach it to something that you're already doing. And if you do that, it sounds like such a simple hack, but it makes a really big difference. And for most people, it's the difference between doing it and not doing it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.